Thank you for joining us about our community conversation on this recreational campground opportunities on county-owned property. Before we get started, I'm Commissioner Patty Adair, and there's Commissioner Tony DeBonne, Commissioner Phil Chang. Is there anything else you wanted to say to start the night?
Thanks for joining us. Yeah, look forward to the discussion.
Okay, and I want to acknowledge some of our agency partners in the room. First, we have J.R. Collier, Deputy Director of Operations, Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. And I happen to know that J.R. is from Wallowa. So anyway, J.R., is there anything you want to say? And his wife, Lisa, is running for commissioner from Wallowa County. So in case anybody's watching, she's running. She's one of the two candidates. Rachel Colton, would you like to say anything to the group? You are the park planner for Bend Parks and Recreation District. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate this. Do we have Jeff Knapp, CEO of Visit Bend, in the room? He was tentative on the schedule. Okay, well, if he shows up, someone let me know. And then who is representing the Shoots Trails Coalition? Okay, thank you, Janet. And then we have Scott Larson, and I just left Tetherow for the COVA meeting a few minutes ago. Scott, would you like to say anything to the room? He is the new executive director, and welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, let me take a few minutes to go over the format of the evening. The meeting will kick off with a brief. Can you guys hear me okay? You can. Oh, shock. Okay. The meeting will kick off with a brief 10-minute update from Mark Buckley, partner and senior economist with Eco Northwest. Following the update from Mark, we will start the community conversation. If you wish to participate in the conversation, please put your name on one of the sign-up sheets located on the table next to the door. Sign-up sheets are grouped by areas of interest. Please sign up on a sheet that best reflects the topics you would like to participate in. If you are joining us by Zoom and would like to participate in the group's discussions, raise your hand at the time when online and other topic groups is called to the table. You will then be promoted to a panelist and you will be able to comment or ask questions. Please note that online participants may experience a brief delay during the status change. Groups of up to 10 people will join us commissioners at the table for 30 minutes each of group discussion. I will moderate and call up each group in turn. The conversations will be recorded and microphones available for those sitting at the table during conversations. Audience members will be able to hear the discussion, but we respectfully request that the audience members do not make comments or ask questions unless your group is at the table. If you prefer to provide written comments, please use the blue sheets located by the table right over here at the door. I will now turn it over to Mark, who is joining us by Zoom this evening. Good evening, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us on your vacation, I believe.
Yes, thank you. I am a Bend resident, and I apologize. This is a long-standing family trip, so I've got lots of kids and grandparents and cousins running around. Hopefully, we don't get disturbed, but I'm just going to be giving a brief presentation highlighting some of the work from a study that we did for the county that we finished last year, looking at some of the feasibility issues associated with 3 potential RV campground sites. I'll be focusing, of course, today only on the Fort Thompson Lane site. A little bit of background on this project. It was a team effort. I myself am a natural resource economist. I lead our natural resource practice at Eco Northwest. Most of my work is for state and federal agencies, also local. I have had the opportunity to work for several of the local organizations here that would be represented, including the city, the county, Bend Parks, Visit Bend, as well as done quite a bit of work with the Forest Service and BLM in the region. I'll touch on some of how that factors into the work that we did. This was a project that was a joint effort with some scientists and landscape planners as well from ESA. So really, this is a very high level summary, and please look at the full report for details, especially in terms of some of the assumptions and underlying data that we used for the calculations. So again, just at a high level, the way this study is focused, we're recognizing the fast pace of population growth, tourism growth, recreation activity among both residents and visitors, and the scarcity of camping opportunities in Deschutes County and really Oregon as a whole. I've worked on this issue for many years in Oregon, back before the state's Office of Outdoor Recreation was formed, where interagency efforts, one of the highest issues that we heard frequently was the scarcity of camping and the challenge of developing new campgrounds in the state. So the county recognizes this issue, and it has all sorts of unintended consequences at times, especially with some of the dispersed camping that results when there's no available developed camping. And so this study evaluated the sites, did a very high level financial analysis, and I'm going to focus on some of those underlying supply demand issues and the financial pro forma here in my quick presentation. So high level, I think people are generally aware population has been growing in the area very rapidly, and it's expected to continue to nearly double over the next 50 years. I won't go into much detail there, but the pace of growth that we've seen in terms of resident increasing numbers is expected to continue. At the same time, tourism is increasing rapidly. This is some of the indirect way we can look at the trend, but basically in terms of some of the tourism tax revenue over the past 20 years, it's doubled at the county level and quadrupled at the city of Bend level. I'll also add that some of the work we've been doing recently, evaluating the balance of resident versus visitor use of recreation areas in Deschutes County, generally the majority is almost always residents. That we have these certain peak moments where it's non-locals that are an important part of that use. And as events increase, we see those scarcities increasing. And so the Deschutes National Forest is obviously a very high profile resource in the area and one of the key attractions. And there's a lot of data available that we can work with. We've had the opportunity to do a fair amount of work with the Forest Service, including at the national level, to evaluate the growth in demand and the investment needs and how we're going to fund development of outdoor recreation opportunities here in Central Oregon. And one of the most obvious is when we can think about how camping fits into it. So we know there are over 2 million visitors a year. Deschutes National Forest, it's moving up towards 3 million quickly. Trail-based activities are the highest category of use. Again, as we said, mostly locals, but non-locals are an important component. And camping is something that we know is always in short supply, especially for the National Forest. We know that there's also hundreds of millions being spent annually on visits, and this is only specific to Deschutes National Forest, expected to be close to 250 million by 2040. And it only makes sense from an economic development perspective to look for ways to capture some of that investment and then look for opportunities to reinvest it in the region. So we did quite a bit of review of the available camping opportunities in the region and look at how heavily used they are. The National Forest campsites are one category where we can see very directly what the utilization rates, the occupancy rates are. We're also able, I'll get to it in a moment, when we can look at some of the county level RV and hotel occupancy rates that are similarly high. We ended up using slightly more conservative numbers than the 60% in our calculation. But as we said, camping is scarce, and opportunities to develop new campsites, new campgrounds on the National Forest are always challenging. So with Fort Thompson Lane in particular, I think people are generally aware of its location between Bend and Redmond. It is a large area. There are some zoning regulatory considerations, but I understand that the county has made some real progress on that front. There are some access issues, of course, and I believe we'll probably be discussing that to some extent today. And Swally Irrigation District does have canal through the site. The development potential is very high in terms of the landscape and the amenities and the potential, especially when we're thinking about something that can be done in a way that coincides with some new trail development as well. So part of the site assessment was to look at utilities and access issues for the region. We evaluated water, sewer, power, stormwater, and telecommunications. In general, this isn't seen as a major obstacle for development of the site. Here's some of that more extensive natural occupancy data that we mentioned. So looking since 2021 across some categories here in Deschutes County, and we generally are following the some of the RV occupancy data to represent our expected use of the site. We realize that demand for recreation and camping is very amenity based, and considering the location, obviously it's not up by a lake, it's not right on a river, but it does have very high accessibility, and especially as we think about the county's the campgrounds and the county fairgrounds, the expo center, and as events increase there, there's an important opportunity to be able to make sure there's enough space for people. So when we think about this site, there's about 98 acres of opportunity acreage that could be developed. Potentially that's a little bit smaller when we think about the actual some of the logistical issues, and we'll see that in the report we talked about a 300 site campground, but in this I'll show you how we've scaled that down quite a bit, and that has a big impact on the cost difference. For our analysis, looking at $45 average daily rate for in-season, 40 for off-season. I know this is generally compatible with what the county is charging at the fairgrounds, but also recognize that for special events, those rates are much higher. I know I just looked at them for the county fair right now, and it's quite a bit higher. Oh, sorry, did I? This is sort of a general pattern of that occupancy rate. I cut off the access for visits because this is what we have in the report, and we've scaled the visits down quite a bit now. And so this is generally the pattern across 3 different scenarios that we looked at of 50 RV sites, 100 RV sites, and 150 RV sites. And at a high level, considering the whole manner of cost investments, we're looking at roughly 3.6 million in terms of capital costs for the 50 site alternative, up to a little over 10 million for a 150 site alternative. All of those have a relatively solid internal rate of return. The net present value is sort of discounting the future revenue against those more current costs, and looking at a years to break even of around 10 to 12 for each of these. This does not include a whole manner of grant funding opportunities that are clearly accessible to the county for this opportunity, and it also doesn't include some of the state tax and fee transfer opportunities that this will offer the county as well. Just again, sort of high level snapshot. This was from our updated analysis for 150 sites, but you can see the kinds of considerations that fall into this analysis, where we have the first 4 or 5 years to get to a natural occupancy rate of around 50.5%. Full analysis runs through 2041, so those net present value estimates are just out through 2041. But of course, these investments would have benefits and positive cash flow well beyond that point. Just some of the additional available funding sources, especially that can help support some of the capital investment up front. Lodging tax revenue. There's an RV license fee revenue distribution process, a whole manner of local volunteer contributions that we already see at a high level for trails, and especially if this area has trail components associated with it. There are federal and state conservation fund dollars available, trail dollars that are administered by OPRD, county opportunity grants, which I understand the county is seeing some real potential there, and then other grant programs administered by the state and federal agencies. So in general, we're seeing a fair number of opportunities here, and certainly recognize that there are also public-private partnership opportunities associated with this. And as we think about what kinds of structures and amenities would be invested, that's going to have a big driving factor on that occupancy rate and what kinds of general revenue and fees we might expect, or rates we can expect. So overall, it seems like there's a very strong return on investment potential. It certainly is well aligned with a lot of the regional scarcities and demands that are growing for residents and visitors. There are public-private opportunities here and a variety of funding sources to reduce that capital cost up front quite a bit from where the level even is with a very positive return on the investment. So with that, I'm going to stop my presentation. That was my last slide. I don't know if we want to have any questions or discussions. I can't remember what the process was, or if I just will mute myself and watch.
I don't believe we were going to be asking you any questions at this time. We appreciate your presentation tonight. So let's then go ahead to the audience if you want to mute. Thank you so much for taking time out of your vacation. It's really appreciated. So we have several groups here tonight that would like to be part of the conversation with the commissioners. Why don't we ask the people that signed up for Fort Thompson Lane to come up first? I do have 10 names on the forms, and then we might have somebody online. Do we have anyone online?
We're gonna do the online as a separate section.
Okay, at the end. Okay, all righty. So I believe we've got Bruce Halperin, Sam Davis, Alex Tarnoff, Leslie, Lindsay Wilcox, Gary Knight, Rich Niederhoff, Ken Moore, Connie Settle, Chip Arthur, Greg Van. If you all want to join us, that would be great. And apparently this isn't like 3 minutes each. It's a group conversation. So thank you for being here tonight.
For 30 minutes. Right.
Hi, thank you guys. Do we have somebody that wants to kick it off? Sam, you didn't want to come up? Your name was on that list. Oh, he was the second person I called. Sam, you.
Taking direction like normal.
Smart man. Okay. Yes. Okay, yes. Could you all please introduce yourselves to the microphone then? That are up here at the table?
My name is Sam Davis. I live in Tumalo.
Bruce Halperin.
Ken Moore.
Gary Knight.
Greg Van,
Connie Settle.
Rich Niederhoff,
Tony DeBone. Bill Chang.
Chip Arthur.
Alex Tarnoff.
Lindsay Wilcox.
Okay, thank you all for joining us. I think we might have met some of you earlier. Yes, do you guys have someone in your that would like to start this conversation? I think Alex, were you on Zoom or something?
I was unfortunately not able to be here in person for that meeting a couple weeks back, but
Right.
appreciated having the opportunity to speak over Zoom. I'm happy to kick things off, or if others want to jump in and
Kick it off.
I'll
Bruce?
kick it off with what I think I'm not sure why we don't get an answer to it. The county is in the final stages of adopting its updated comprehensive plan. And goal 8 of that plan is recreation. And I did have all these papers with me and I was going to read some of it, but they all instead scratch paper came and that stuff's at home. But goal 8 says right at almost every page in the 4 pages on that one, that the county is not in the parks and recreation business, and the county coordinates with other governments to provide recreation. The policies listed there, about half of them speak to that coordination with other government agencies. There is nothing there that says the county provides parks. Policy near the end says, someday consider setting up a parks and recreation department. and getting into parks. But that's it. So I still don't understand how the comp plan is important. And it's kind of the county Bible. And yet it's just being ignored by let's build a park and let's build a campground. And I'd love to have someone explain to me the dichotomy of those two and how you're just ignoring that.
I would just say the county comprehensive plan is being updated right now. This is a very different moment in time than it was 10, 11, 12 years ago when the last comp plan was developed. And the comp plan this go round will express, similar desire on behalf of the county to expand our recreational assets and amenities for our community. And that is in part because of the substantial demand for said assets and amenities. So
That didn't make sense to me, Commissioner. The comp plan says recreation will be provided by others and the county will coordinate it. And it's
comp plan
almost
is
adopted.
being-
It's in a few
being
weeks.
updated right now.
It's yes. So this is like, oh no, but except we're going to ignore all that and let's just build us a park with a campground. And
So I'll step in. I mean, remember, this is just an analysis from the market. At least two commissioners saying, yeah, we should look into this. I like the idea of partnering with a private developer. We haven't even gotten to that point. So you're jumping right to the concept that we started a park department, which we haven't. This is early in the process.
I don't think anyone saying anything about a park department. It's just saying you guys are going to do a park, want to do a park and a campground, and you need the park to do the campground, which is what people really want. But
As I say,
it's pretty clear. If you read that, it says we don't do parks.
And you should also understand that we are in the process of chapter by chapter revising the draft comp plan right now.
Oh, I understand.
So things have, the last couple of weeks into next week, we are subtracting, adding, revising chapter by chapter as a board of commissioners. So what a draft comp plan says is what a draft comp plan says.
I think another question that some members of this group have is around demand. The demand for sites like this. There's a presumption that having an infrastructure RV park, let's call it that, will pull dispersed campers out, which is, potential. I mean, that could be potentially be there. Within the RFP, it says that there is a shortage, that we need to consider an expansion of low-cost camping options to accommodate the influx of tourists and houseless populations. Setting houseless aside, Phil, I know you have addressed that this is not, a solution for the unhoused. Within the RFP itself, it says we have a demand issue. So I think what would be really helpful for this group is to understand the premises upon which that argument is made. So, Econ Northwest's job is to back up, what is in the RFP. I am a professional management consultant. I know how this works, but it is kind of difficult to take this at face value without seeing the underlying data. And so I think there are some questions. Others have done, deeper research into some of the demand projections. And we thank Mr. Buckley for being here. He did mention that, many of, the need for demand for, tourism or trail usage is coming from local visitors who presumably won't need an RV park. So I think I would just like to open up this, discussion for demand and understand some of the, data underlying that. If anyone else wants to jump in.
No, I agree. I went through that and I know
Yeah.
they source it from Google.
Yeah.
And I noticed, I think it's not called Crown Villa now, but Crown Villa wasn't in there. The 176 off of Murphy Road wasn't in there. And, now they're doing what it sounds like this project could theoretically be.
It covers the Murphy Road site. I ran through all the analytics.
Yeah,
The Murphy
yeah.
Road more than covers the projected demand in
Right.
Econ Northwest analysis.
Are you
And
talking
some
about
of
the luxury RV park that's being developed
The
on Murphy Road?
market rate
Yeah, it's market
I
rate.
mean, it's being billed as a luxury RV park and
Sure,
and
but
it
it's $50.
Yeah.
so.
it's going to be, it'll be different than, I mean, it's the middle of a city. And it will be different than, say, the experience you could have.
I think,
Road.
I think that's also just one example
Yeah.
of one particular park. Not to steal Bruce's analysis or thunder here, but
Yeah.
to steal it, borrow it, I should say. The Econ Northwest report, and as thorough and commendable job as they did, omitted upwards of 600 sites, both within known RV parks, as well as looking at Hip Camp, which is the simplest term to describe that as an Airbnb for individual campsites. So if you think about 600 additional units that didn't factor into their analysis, just to put that into perspective for scale, I think their analysis documented about 1,000 units. So that's about 60% more and is far in excess of the 68 units that their analysis also suggested would be required to reach natural occupancy. So the Murphy Road sure may be a different clientele, a different price point that, you know, we can waste our time debating on another time. But I think the macro point is that there's a lot more supply that just our collective analysis has unearthed than was initially documented in that report.
And I think also when he was referring to Deschutes National Forest and the use of that, I wouldn't assume that if you're going to be in an urban type setting, camping, that those would be the same people that want to go up to, there's no real natural resources there. Trail, if you think of it, that's not natural. But those campers want to go to the mountains, the lakes, be out, not. Great, Trader Joe's is 2 miles away. Let's
Not on
go.
90.
Well, and so
Yeah.
we talked about this before. I mean, this Fort Thompson location is in your backyard, pretty much everybody at the table here. I mean, that's why you're here. You don't want it close in proximity to where you live right now. So I mean, this is where we're at. This is the kind of people that are coming to us saying, no, you can't. You're trying to justify it. I understand. Hip Camp's not authorized. State law doesn't allow Hip Camp. It's unauthorized rentals when that's happening. I've gotten calls. What's that?
Never meet a demand.
Oh, that's state law. We don't have the opportunity to do that. And you know, so it's just interesting. So I'm just pointing out, we're chipping in the edges here, but and I met with some of you already.
How about access? How are they going to come off 97 and go in?
Can we
Yeah.
finish the discussion about demand before we go to access?
I'd like
I mean,
to make some comments on
Yeah.
that.
A couple of things I'd like to say about demand. Number one, this all starts with the state SCORP report, SCORP. If you haven't looked at it, and I'm sorry, I do not remember what SCORP stands for off the top of my head, but it is a statewide analysis that that actually covers the need for camping around the state. It's assembled by the State Park and Rec Department. So you start there, you get some regional data, and then you can work from there. As you heard, Mark has worked from there, and Echo Northwest have worked from there, tying in real data from real places in Deschutes County. I just to kind of make this very concrete for people, I would point you to the nearest public campground to this site, which is Tumalo State Park. And if I've seen the data for Tumalo State Park. Tumalo State Park is way above 60% occupancy for about 4 or 5 months of the year, and then has substantial demand during shoulder seasons. Talking to park managers, I have heard about all of the people who don't try to make reservations in advance, show up and are turned away. Where are they going? Where could they go? So there is, I have no doubt that there is very substantial demand for developed campsites, in this community, and we have not necessarily. Another part of the Echo Northwest analysis was basically, this is kind of like a national, a national formula or ratio, but, comparing campsites to hotel rooms. And if you look at the, they're not interchangeable, but they're correlated, right? The two things rise together. So if you look at the rate of addition of hotel rooms in our community over the last couple of decades, and you compare that to the number of campsites that have been developed, you will see that one is a steeply climbing line and one is a relatively flat line. So, we can talk about this, at great length. I guess another important thing for people to understand is this was an initial feasibility analysis. We are not at a build or not build decision point at this point. We are at a point where we're asking whether we should do some more analysis and planning on a project, explore a project more. As part of that additional exploration, the reason this showed up on the Board of Commissioners agenda a couple months ago was because we were contemplating whether we should apply for a state grant to do some more analysis and planning. As part of that next stage of analysis and planning, there will be much more robust financial and economic analysis, business planning around any kind of a park campground concept.
Could I interject?
And that will be the appropriate point. After that would be the appropriate point to do a build or not build decision.
Rich, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. Again, you're making a lot of arguments on different data that you're generating and that you're claiming or exist. I'll go back to the original one that bothers me as somebody been involved with natural resource management and land development for almost 60 years now. Your first statement talked about the Tumalo State Park, talking about the rates. Tumalo State Park is a destination campground. I've taught outdoor recreation classes, and you have transition campgrounds and you have destination campgrounds. That is a destination campground. You have the river there. You have the proximity of a lot of events there. You're comparing two different things. What you're talking about at Fort Thompson does not have any of the amenities there. A canal going through there is not exactly the equivalent of the Deschutes River.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that's a statement that I totally disagree with.
The views from this 500-acre property are of the mountains are a whole lot better than they are at Tumalo State Park. The Tumalo State Park has some really special amenities, but it is
I would like to back it up. I think comparing Tumalo State Park to Fort Thompson is somewhat akin to apples and oranges. I think it's misleading at best and deceptive at worst. Tumalo State Park is a destination. It's beautiful. There's a river there. There's access to it. You can float it. It's not in the city. It is a very nice place. Fort Thompson, on the other hand, being neighbors to it, I could attest very accurately. It is dry. It's dusty. It's arid. It's right adjacent to 97 with all the traffic noise of 97. And I looked in the Eco Northwest report, and they had these cute little maps with little red arrows saying, this is how far the traffic noise goes. That is completely erroneous. During the daytime, yeah, traffic noise is subdued. In the nights when people are camping and sleeping, it is at my house, which would be Connie's house, Bruce's
How far
house,
would you?
Sunbeam Lane.
Okay, Sunday. Okay.
It is loud.
You're the 101 at my house. It's miles away.
It's loud, and particularly if a truck hits the rumble strips, it sounds like there's machine guns going off close by. It is not serene. It's not attractive. It's a completely, it is not a destination at all. If anything, it may be a transient campsite en route to somewhere
Which
better.
does not fit the location they're talking about, that roughly 35 acres off of Hunter Road. It does not fit for a transit type campground. Got to have that close to the main road access like 97.
Yeah, that's one of my major concerns. I've lived there for 50 years. I patrol this area personally. I have driven out 20, 30, 40, 50 transients. we used to call them freeloaders, and booted them out. I've hauled vehicles out. I currently live there. And I don't plan on moving, and I don't want to see the place turned back into a dump. That's one of my concerns. It is not a desirable place. Nobody from Bend that I know of would say, yeah, I want to go out there. And I have people come out there. I have people come out there now. And I have a place, we have horses and we do different stuff. We go through part of this area. And in that part, and that whole thing is like, nobody says, yeah, I want to go out there and camp. And it's like, so my concern is who's going to come in here? I've never chased out somebody in a $50,000 motor, ever,
Well,
over
no one,
50 years.
there is no access at this
I
point.
have built roads. The roads that came through there, I have taken my backhoe, cut slots in them, moved rocks to keep people out over and over and over. And where did they go? East side. And you want to bring them back to the west side. And that's what I don't want to see happening. If you actually had, what you're saying is a dream that I don't see as real. You're having a dream. Oh yeah, this is going to be great. They want to come, and we have people here that want to build a trail. How about coming out and talking to one of the gals that works my horses? She can tell you where a trail will go. Do you think people from Bend are going to come out and walk along this dusty thing? No, they're going to go to a mountain. They're going to go to Walton Lake. They're going to go to Big Prairie. They're going to go to different places to go hiking. And they're not going to come out in the dusty part. Right now, they walk down the river trail. There's some nice trails. This is not a place for a nice trail. You'd have to have major work. And where are you going to go? Where does it go? It goes nowhere. So you're going in a circle in this dusty area. I see it just like he's saying, more of a transition place. They're going to come in here. Well, we don't have enough room here, so let's stay here for a few nights, and then we're going to go somewhere else. It's not going to be like, well, there's this big need for people just to come and camp. And Tumalo State Park, totally different thing, just like he's saying. That's a destination. This will not be a destination. This will be a place that is actually an overflow. So right now you're talking about overflow. You're talking about overflow from the fair. You're talking about overflow from the park down at Tumalo. That's what I see it. Now, I've lived there for all this time, and there have been some serious things. And a lot of the people that used to live by Mays Pond, east of town, some of you probably don't even know where that is anymore. But cleared out that area, and it's been clear for a long time, but I patrolled it. I still patrol it, and I chase people out. And so when you say, yeah, we're just going to open this up, but we don't know what's going to happen, I just see it going downhill. It just, and we've got nice homes. There's nice places out there. If we really, really knew that this was going to be a nice place and things were going to be there, and there was the people who were going to be monitoring, and we've got all kinds of issues. Who's going to patrol the place besides me? Well, now we're going to bring in the sheriffs, and they're going to come out, and I've had to have the sheriffs come out there and dig out people that have dumped all their stuff in there because they were going to jail. So this has gone on for years. And I don't want to see it run down. I plan on living there for another 20 years, 30, if I make it to that. I'm in my 70s, and I do not want to see this run down again. I don't want to see my 30, 40 years of cleaning this up all of a sudden feel, oh, let's just make it into a dump. That's not what you said. I know that's not what you said, but that's what I see happening. So when you say, well, we're pulling people out of the woods, and you just now backed up from what you said before. You said, oh, Murphy Road, or whatever it was down there, is going to be a high-end place. And it's only $5, $10 less than what you're talking about doing. So why would you say, no, this is going to be a lesser place? You see it actually as a lesser place. And my main concern is, I don't think you're transparent with this. There's no access there. People that are here, not here right now, the access you were going to go is like it came up last time. Oh, we're going to go right through their property.
Can I respond to that?
Go for it. I'm wound up. Okay.
I'll concede to you. You've been there 50 years. I've only lived out there 46 years.
Okay.
So I'm
Priorities.
I'd like to go ahead and jump into that on access, because this is what thing that really triggered this in terms of trust and transparency. When I started first finding out about this campground, this proposal that was done, in October of last year, you received the feasibility report, I believe it was in October. I think it was like in January, I started hearing rumors of this and living out there that long. The 40 acres that is immediately to the west of the 35 or 40 acres that you're wanting to put into the campground area one. I saw that property had soil sample pits put in there. Somebody was going to do something, so I started checking up on it and come to the discovery that it was being changed and was successfully changed from EFU to MUA 10. What we've got the rest of them in multiple use agriculture, 10 acre. It belongs to Mike Groves. I said, oh, good. I wanted to welcome him to the neighborhood because my understanding was he was going to put in a family concave there for 10-acre parcels, homes for his family and so forth. So I wanted to welcome him to the neighborhood because the Huns out there, we're a quality group. It's a quality neighborhood. I just tell you that. I proceeded to find out in doing the research and looking at the maps that the intent for this 30 acres would go through their property. So I called him up. He was down in Palm Springs on vacation. I called him up and said, Mike, I'd like to welcome you to the neighborhood. However, what's this about you letting a road go through your property? He knew nothing about it. He'd never been contacted about that. I was the one that broke him to the story about the plans for the campground. And that initiated, he was furious about it, and he is to this day. He and his representative have told me that I could speak for them at this, and saying he's still absolutely opposed to that. What are you going to have? It's going to have to be a quality road. Is that going to be a paved quarter-mile road that you're going to have to pay for? Is that included in the cost? It's going to go through a property. It's going to have to be done by what? Condemnation? So you got access. This is a big thing on, obviously. I've dealt with land use development in my whole career. I'm 80, so I've been around since I was 20 in natural resources. And we talk about in land development, location. There's something else that I've dealt mainly with forest lands and so forth. It's called access. That's the number one. Number two is water. There's other things. So this access thing is what triggered a lot of concern on all of our parts. And I don't want to be looked at as just a NIMBY. I don't think we are just that. We're interested in protecting the area because it is a quality area. But as a land manager, I looked at all of the different existing goals that are there, LCDC rules, goals, and so forth, that you claim you're getting variations for, and you may get them, including you're too close to the UGB, you're within the 3-mile range. There's a whole list of them. I was going to discuss them at some point, and all of a sudden I realized, no, the fact that they all exist, even if you get approval of them, that's a red flag to me, says you're doing something wrong for the zoning and for the use of land in Oregon. In my 55 years living in Oregon, I've been so proud of this state has done so much with its laws of zoning and so forth to protect the quality, to prevent the growth that existed in so many towns where it's just expanded wildly, that I've been so very proud of that. When I see so many different ones that you may get exceptions to, when there's so many, that's a red flag to me as a land manager saying something is wrong. That got me digging deeper into this beyond just being a resident of that community, of that area.
Before we
I don't know if
get into the
be
access
able to
issue.
speak or not. Sam, you're kept fine? Would you like to say something?
I would.
Wait a moment. Before we get into the access issue, I want to give you a little bit of history on that rezone application.
For the road?
Yeah, for those 40 acres. That rezone application came to the county, rose up to the Board of Commissioners for a hearing. I was told by the attorney for that property that they wanted to provide an easement for the county through the property to access these 500 acres.
You no longer have that.
I think it was offered, not wanted.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
So that was that for me actually created a conflict of interest. So I said, if you are offering us a right of way to potentially develop this park that I'm interested in exploring, like I cannot objectively evaluate your application. So I recused myself from that land use decision, that land use hearing. My fellow commissioners supported it, approved the rezone. And then, I heard later on that we're not talking at all about a right of way or an easement. So you want to talk about, people feeling like there's no transparency or, people getting deceived. The person who was deceived in this case was me. So, because I have made all kinds of commitments to the people along Hunnell Road that I am not interested in ramming development and more growth down their throat, and which is part of the reason why I'm interested in this park concept. Just to be clear, while we're talking about land use, land in this area of the county is in very high demand for all kinds of things. My fellow commissioners have approved a number of rezones from exclusive farm use to rural industrial, less than a mile to the north of this property, up by the Chutes Market Road junction. There was a proposal, Commissioner Adair was working on a proposal to build a very large mobile home park just to the south of this 500-acre property.
And the interesting thing was, once I read the analysis with the zoning issues, I thought, oh, there is no way hell freezes over before that would ever happen. So that immediately pulled that out off of my efforts, because the actual ECHO report was clear in the zoning and the issues.
Yeah, I'd like to compliment too. Actually, I was very impressed with the $100,000 proposal. I thought somebody worked in land development before, I thought it was well done, because they did I can't speak to the numbers. That's not my area, the financial area, but I can speak to it in terms of they did a good job of making very clear what the concerns and limitations were. It wasn't glossed over as proof of a concept, and I was very impressed with that. So I will say that, and that's what brought out so many of these points of the different zoning and so forth that have to be questioned.
Okay, but didn't you say they missed a whole bunch of actual units in our inventory?
They did. And so I similar to what others have mentioned, I think there was many parts of it that were robust. I understand that it was a initial high level financial and market assessment. I would say, in my professional opinion, and I for 10 plus years have been a management consultant, I thought there were some pretty glaring omissions. But I recognize that this was an initial review. I don't want to derail us though from, I think, what's a really rich discussion on land use, back into unpacking the financials of it. Happy to do that. More than happy to do that. But I also don't want to steer us if there's a lot more to be had in
if
that.
I could finish my point.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's incredibly high demand for land in this area. The county owns this as an asset property. Our job is to use or dispose of this land to the benefit of the people of Deschutes County.
Deschutes County, not Oregon, right?
Of Deschutes County, yeah. And
When you say
I have real concerns if we do not come up with a public use for this property that maintains it as open space. I have real concerns that the pressure to dispose of this property for other uses, to secure revenue for the county and to provide for economic development or growth or new housing, is going to be very high.
Can I make a proposal then? I've actually looked at that. You're familiar with what the Bob and Fran Greenlee have done? The Bob and Fran Greenlee own 40 acres out in that area. They've owned it since 1967. They were planned on building on the property. They decided against that. They decided to leave that in its natural state. I worked with them carefully. My property, my 5 acres just adjoins that to the north. I've worked with them. I've told them my whole time I've been out there, my whole 46 years, I've watched their property along with Gary and so forth. We've kept an eye on that property. It's got beautiful old growth juniper on it. And working with them over the years, they came to me about 2 years ago and said what they would like to do is set that as a preserve in perpetuity, to leave it in its natural state in perpetuity. And that's what it exists right now. There's 30 acres of it that is to be left in a perfectly natural state in perpetuity that can only be used for research, education, and preservation. And that's what it's set aside for. It's an excellent use for that. I would make a proposal, you look at all or part of this 550 acres to look at that same thing, thinking 50 years in the future, looking at it in terms of what somebody like Aldo Leopold talked about, or John Muir, or some of these people with vision that talked about keeping stuff set aside for a long period of time. It's either that or you're going to let it go into developments, as you said. So that's
Well,
just
just
another.
told me how this is not a very special property. So
Said special for
For a
camp.
park.
I think
It's
that's,
not.
that's
For destination, no, it's not.
If you look at the wildlife
Right.
explorer that
I won't defer to
that
Clea.
map that just came in, it's in the high risk, and it also has a wildlife land interface over it, which I was trying to read it, and there was some outfield, but it said like 4% of the state land is in that wildlife interface, and so we're gonna take away, so we're gonna add 3% of the state. So I mean, to me, you know, it is right now public land. Anybody in the public can use it. They can.
well, it has a barbed wire fence around it. It has no access roads into it yet.
Well, I don't know. I'm just saying you can use it. It is public use. But access may be a problem, but it is public use.
Yeah.
Bruce?
So physically, this land is really, really, really similar to Marsden and the areas around Climb Butte, the BLM lands. And they're very nice juniper sage dust bowls. They may have views in some places, they may don't. Marsden is probably the most similar. And BLM has put in some very nice mountain bike trails, 2 little parking lots with an outhouse, and 3 picnic tables at one. And the land gets used, it gets preserved. That could easily happen over here at Fort Thompson, makes it a recreational resource with minimal cost to install, minimal cost to maintain, so that the idea of, oh, all parks are revenue sinks and we have to have a campground goes away. BLM does not spend a lot of money maintaining Marsden. That could be done the same over there. It preserves the land. 20 years from now, if the county needs it for something else or the public wants it for something else, it's still there. But it's being a useful recreational tool in the short run.
Yeah, I think just to build off that, one of the concerns that many of us have with,
Excuse me, I
Oh,
just need to interrupt you all because I've already blown it. Missed the 30 minutes. Apparently I was supposed to look at the screen up there. So someone should have thrown something at me. So you, 2 minutes to finish up. So if you want to finish up. with-
all ready to say something. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna defer to you, so I just like to say that my little spiel revolves around page 32 of the study, which it says, constructed on a limited data, and we strongly recommend resources to refine the assumptions used in the pro forma. I personally believe the pro forma is wrong. I've given you guys, I sent it by email, my reasonings for that. You don't match it all with what's happening. Let me give you the number. If you took your numbers for the 2 key things that drive that pro forma, which are ADR, average daily rate, and the occupancy rate, if you take those 2 and apply them up there to the county fairgrounds, you have 80% more revenue than what you actually get there. I took the pro formas from the park up there, they're public. And I said, these guys get $570,000 a year for doing their thing up there. And so I take the numbers from Econ No West, plug them in for their rates and their occupancy, and they should have 80% more revenue at that park. So I'm saying that there's some serious faults in that model. And I got other stuff here, I could go on forever, but do you realize what you got over here? These are McKinsey guys. I ran around I ran around in big banks and software selling, and when McKinsey showed up, you listened. And I would bet you their rate is a lot higher than, than anybody's in the room. So I defer to them. They have two of my questions on their list. But I truly think I'm concerned about the fact that it fails.
What happens if it does?
And what happens if it fails? And if it fails, you guys are gonna sit here 3 years from now and you're gonna say, oh my God, we spent all this money, what are we gonna do? And then, and you know what you're gonna do?
Build decision point right now.
And what you're gonna do is you're gonna say, well, we just spent $3 million, we're gonna have to bring in some other campers. And that's why on the website, which I run, I use this little term, might be a homeless camp in disguise. And I know you didn't like that. And I also want to thank all you guys for doing such a good job on homelessness. Has nothing to do with that. I believe that. And I think you've done some really remarkable things recently. But this is another story. And I'm worried about it. And I'm worried about you have a bad financial model. And now I turn it over to my good friend.
Well, I think just wanted to build off of what and I understand we're not at a build or not build decision point. I think one of the things that I am most concerned about, and I think to summarize what a lot of us have also feel is if we were to move forward to a build point, that building something like an RV park, you can't take that back. It's not a great or very desirable camping spot. There is some beauty, and I defer to Rich, there's beautiful trees there. There are very important natural elements to that area. That doesn't mean it'll be a great campground. But if you build it, and I know we're not there, if we were to build it into a campground, you can't backpedal on that. There's no ripping up of the campground and restoring it to its natural place. So I say that insofar as that if this group does decide to move forward with it, you better be pretty darn sure that it's going to work financially and across all other aspects of it, because once you start building it, there's no going back from it. And there's no way to restore it to where it is currently. And so that's, I think one of the final things I'd like to say in this session is it's really a one-way door. I think opportunities like what Bruce has laid out, what Rich have laid out, they provide what we were in our world refer to as optionality for the future. And I think there is that you can't put a price on optionality. Building an RV park is a one-way door.
And sitting here, I know why I sat on this side of the room, and I'm sure you're all sick of hearing me talk about Worrell Park, but with the source, save that gorgeous park right out those windows.
Good job.
No, I mean, it's so, we have deer in it. It's an amazing, over an acre. And someone was gonna flatten it with 3,000 dump truck loads later. Now that should have been saved. That is truly a unique part of Bend's downtown history. But I really can't say the same about these 500 acres of dry dirt and juniper trees. So anyway, no water. I think really water. And what if they pipe the canal? Then what is that gonna do?
The contract has been signed.
Yes, so it's like, so there you get your little brook sound is gonna be gone. It's gonna be piped. So anyway,
Hotter and dustier.
okay, guys, we
you.
gave you extra time.
Thank you.
If you have any documents you want to turn in, please do. Thank you so much.
I would be curious, if possible, to get Mr. Buckley's updated pro forma, for the smaller campgrounds, if those are able to be shared.
I'm sure we can.
And
Just
Yeah,
have.
that'll be.
you want,
One other thing I'd like to see talked about more as this thing goes on is all the focus is on the campground. Here, that's all we talk about. Is that, but if the campground can only be there if there's a park, and there really does need to be more talk about visions on the park. And putting in a few mountain bike trails is not making a park. It's a raw recreational area. And if it's really gonna be a park.
You can talk to Ben Park and Rec about.
When I talked to them, they said they weren't very interested.
That's Worrell Park.
It's too far out for them for now, not their area.
Evelyn Park was pretty far out a long time ago.
Thank you for listening to us, school to thank you so much. It's like, well, we have to go to-
Yeah, well, I also never knew I would learn more about our beautiful spaces
Well,
today.
Next week.
Guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chang.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next group, this group to join our roundtable will be the tourism recreational use interest. Emily Anders, Jana Johnson, and Kim McCarran. So please join us. And I will, since there's three of you, I'll start the time.
Are we not having parks folks here at this?
This is who signed up.
Did neither of you sign up?
Go wherever you guys want me to.
I think it'd be great to have trails and parks people at the table at the same time.
You should have signed up. I mean, come on.
Here's your opportunity.
Okay, thank you all. Oh, all right. I will add your names to the list. Thank you. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves again for the record, please?
Oh, sure. I'm Emmy Andrews, and I am the Executive Director of CODA, Central Oregon Trail Alliance.
Okay,
I'm Kim McCarroll. I'm with Oregon Equestrian Trails.
yes.
I'm Jana Johnson. I'm the Executive Director of the Deschutes Trails Coalition.
Rachel Colton, I'm a planner with Bend Park and Recreation District.
J.R. Collier, Deputy Director of Operations for Oregon Parks and Recreation.
Okay, thank you for joining us at the front table.
Does this look like a place that'd be good for recreation and trails?
Yes. Yes. Have you been to the property, Kim?
I have not.
Okay, I've been to the property. I've been to the property. I mean, honestly, frankly, it wouldn't be my first choice of place to put. I mean, it is true. It's lovely, but it's lovely in that Central Oregon way. You know, it's dry. It's got lovely trees. It's very similar to Maston. The person that said that's very true. But the highway noise does go quite through the property. So I definitely think that is something to consider. But you know, when you consider the town and what people love, and people love to get outside, and I live on the northeast side, and I mean, I drive around and ride my bike, and I'm like, where are all these houses coming from? And there's really not a big recreation place like that on the north side. So it would be really, I think it would be a great community amenity, and I think it would be very much in line with what people kind of expect from the Central Oregon landscape. So yeah.
To me, the comparison to Maston was made, could, you know,
Oh, yeah.
being the organization that helps all these public lands agencies build, design, build, and then maintain trails. Can you talk a little bit about A, how CODA does that, and B, what it actually takes to create a system like that?
Yeah, and actually it's so CODA partners with BLM and actually built and maintains the trails at Maston and many others besides, but specifically Maston. It was before my time, but my understanding is BLM actually came to CODA and said, look, we're having issues on this property. There's starting to be dumping of trash. There's starting to be people residing out here. Like, we think some recreation infrastructure, i.e. trails, would actually help manage that, because then there's people around who are going to sort of call in things that are amiss and who are going to just, by their presence, kind of discourage that type of, it's just not a peaceful place to do those things, you know, like unload trash from your truck if you know that somebody might see you. So that was the genesis of the Maston Trailhead and that whole system of trails. And, you know, it's, from my perspective, just going out there and being kind of the main nonprofit that takes care of those trails, it does seem to have really worked. We have a trail counter out there now with BLM. There are hundreds of people out there a day. Sometimes, you know, when it's really hot, the numbers fluctuate, but yeah, it's very popular. There's sort of a overlapping, like, equestrian network of trails with trails that are sort of more for bikes, and then people on foot are welcome on either network of trails. So it's been a really wonderful resource. And I would just add maybe that there are a lot of these concerns about just where you put trails and how it's all done, but I'd love to tell you, I'd love to go on and on about it, but I will not. But there are a lot of things you can do in the design of trails to kind of keep people where you want them and get them to do the things you want and get them to stay away from sensitive areas. And, it's a lot to go into the specifics of how you do that. But there are lots of really creative and time-tested ways of sort of building a trail system that achieves what you want and keeps people from doing the things you don't want them to do. So.
I can chime in, just from the Deschutes Trails Coalition's perspective. So a little bit about the coalition. We're a coalition of 30+ partner groups, and that represents tourism, businesses, conservation organizations, trail user groups, and land management agencies. So the stakeholders that value trails for a whole variety of reasons. Some of those are recreation use specifically, but we're not a trails organization that simply just advocates for trails. We want sustainable trails. So we're looking at the economic relationship of trails to our local community. We're looking at environmental factors. We're looking at social considerations, user conflicts, dispersing use, and we're also looking at the physical sustainability of a given trail. And what our coalition, we drafted a letter that was sent to the commissioners last spring. And so I'll just kind of reiterate what some of those points are behind the support that the coalition as a whole is lending to this project. One is just the value of open space and the accessibility of recreation to the public. Currently, that doesn't sound like that's the case without access. I think all those considerations around access can be addressed, but that's a fundamental value of the Trails Coalition. And I'll say that our response was mostly centered around trail-based recreation, though we understand that there's a relationship between the campground and the construction of trails. There's a lot of different sources of funding to construct trails, but there's also a relationship that I think in our minds, there's no question of the demand and the financial viability of a campground. I mean, there's just overflow everywhere. I won't speak on behalf of the Deschutes National Forest, but as a recreation manager there from 2016 to 2022, it's just a common theme that there's just a lot of overflow of camping. And so the coalition feels like there's a relationship between the campground, the revenue it could generate there, and how that could also support the trail system, in addition to those other funding sources and having groups like CODA that are largely made up of volunteers that are doing a lot of the work out there. Another point was that there's not, as Emmy mentioned, there's really no trail opportunities in Northeast Bend. You've got to get in your car and drive in most places in Bend if you want to have access to a trail network. And it's good for dog walking. It's good for people out for trail runs, going for a bike ride. I think that area would lend itself to more beginner trails. There's a lot of families that are in these residential areas, so that's a great opportunity as well. And yeah, the third point was really just that relationship between campgrounds and the trail system, and just our feeling is that there is a scarcity of that campground opportunity. Especially, I know people said like, well, why would this isn't, people aren't coming here to this campground to enjoy the sagebrush or whatever is the vegetation type that is there, or the canal or whatnot. But I think there's people that are coming to this area. They're not just staying at their campgrounds. They're going to enjoy what's at the campground, but they're also going to go out and check out Bend. They're going to go out on these different trails. They're going to go and explore. And if there aren't places to stay in campgrounds that do have those more quote desirable, features, they're going to go to the next best option. I mean, we're seeing it on the forest, people disperse camping. So I think it is a desirable location, just given its proximity to everything else, even if you're not sitting streamside from your campsite. I think those were my points. Do you want to add anything? Sorry.
Is there connectivity for bicycle routes already to that property, or are there big challenges to get, to leave your Northeast Bend house and be able to roll all the way out there?
I don't know if you have.
I think the access right now, is a challenge. There wouldn't be really any way other than riding on the shoulder of 97 that I'm aware of. So it's not great now. That would definitely be something that would have to be figured out with how it was developed.
Thank you.
Kim, did you want to add something?
Yeah, please. Oregon Equestrian Trails built and maintained all of the trails at Maston, as well as all over the rest of the Klein Buttes area. And so we have a fair amount of experience with trails. I can tell you that Emmy's absolutely right. I mean, the thought process behind installing some of these trails was the good uses tend to drive out the bad uses. If you've got legitimate people who are there for legitimate reasons, you're not going to have the kinds of, people dumping their cars and residing and so forth, because you've got legitimate users there all the time. I think this is an astonishing opportunity to create a park or a series of amenities with the campground and the trails that will pay for themselves. They'll solve the scarcity issue of, or will help solve the scarcity issue of campgrounds and not having enough of those. And it's going to pay for itself. How many things the county spends money on actually end up paying for themselves? I think that's a pretty important thing to hang on to. Someone made the point earlier about Bendites aren't going to come to this dusty area. Well, I can tell you that the folks who live in Stevens Ranch and don't want it to be developed because it will ruin the trails that they go out dog walking on, bike riding, just taking a nice walk after work. They're really upset about losing that public land, that access that they currently have. And I hate to see that happen. Even if this never became anything more than just for the kind of general neighborhood usage on the trails, that still would be a tremendous loss to the neighborhood and to the area. So I hope that that gets taken into consideration.
Make a general comment about as far as we were talking about before, when you bring people somewhere, it's anyone's been trained as a land use planner, Jane Jacobs, right? And she talks about eyes on the street, and having more people around inherently prevents the uses you don't want to happen. So I'm with Bend Park and Recreation District. We manage the parks and recreation resources predominantly within the city of Bend. Our boundaries extend a bit beyond the city of Bend. For example, Big Sky Park, where one of the comments we made and one of the reasons we got some grant funding to do work out of Big Sky was because there weren't a lot of bike resources out of Big Sky. So a Big Sky Bike Park out there, which was partially funded by Bend Sustainability Fund. So one of the things that we've been talking to county staff and county commissioners about is the opportunity for funding. There is currently, the area is not within our service area. And so there's no identified parks or trails that the district has contemplated at this time. We are certainly happy at this time to talk. We've already talked to staff about grant opportunities. We're happy to give guidance on that. We've been very successful with a lot of the grant programs that Mark mentioned as part of his presentation. And so there's a lot of opportunities for whether it's land acquisition or construction of these amenities for funding. Some are local, like I know Jeff Knapp couldn't be here. I don't think he was able to join this evening, but the Bend Sustainability Fund is a great opportunity when you're able to use transient room taxes or the TRT monies to fund, constructions of things like Big Sky Bike Park or some of the trails that CODA has built. So there's a lot of great funding opportunities available. And that's for us, when I was looking at some of our results we do a perception and awareness survey every 3 years. And if we're talking about Bend residents, I can tell you the majority of residents, one of the reasons they're here is because they want to use parks and recreation services. I can't log into our VPN right now for some reason, but I'm just giving some high level stats from our website. So back in 2023, 81%, we had a statistically valid survey for this data, just to be clear. 81% of the people who respond to the survey visited a park or trail within the past year. So the people that live in Bend want these resources and heavily utilize them. So, we certainly support, enhancing the ability for both residents of Bend and visitors of Bend to be able to play and recreate and play for life, as we say. And we do see a lot of tourists coming to our facilities. We just got some new, we got something called Placer AI that's going to help us better understand where our visitors are coming from. But I can tell you, we've gotten some of this data before from Visit Bend. And for example, down like at Miller's Landing Park, where we've been given some grant money for improvements there, 35+% of people that come to those areas are visitors. So there's a lot of areas within town that people would travel to from that come from Tumalo State Park and other places to visit these resources within Bend.
Okay, JR, it's your turn.
Well, thanks. Hi, everybody. Again, JR with the Oregon State Parks and I'll give you the spoil alert of I am a park proponent. So just but I guess I wouldn't, in regards to this, I wouldn't have probably any input specifically on these subject properties, whether they were a good idea or a bad idea. Like what I'm going to bring is just like considerations from what we see as running a park system and really defer to local government on where that is best or not suited. And so would really start out by kind of talking a little bit about Commissioner Chang mentioned it, the statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, the SCORP document. OPRD funds that and has that document prepared. It's updated every 5 years. So it's actually usually pretty relevant data as far as survey of data of users in park systems from city to county to state park systems, active surveying, surveying of reservation holders, just cold calling of people, mailers. It's a very, very substantial work that's done every 5 years. And that data consistently does say people are seeking more outdoor recreation opportunities. So I think that's absolutely correct when people reference that and say there is a demand for more trails, for more campgrounds. Consistently, that's the feedback. And so when it comes to utilization, what I will reference is a lot of our experience in the state park system is our campgrounds run at full occupancy. I would say at or near 100% for about at least 5 months a year. On the coast, that's about 7 months a year. That is consistently shown to us that we have a there for more sites, and those sites are consistently that are chosen are the higher amenity sites. RV sites are chosen before tent sites. Tent sites that have a plumbed restroom are chosen over dry camp sites that have a vault toilet, and that is consistent across our system. So anecdotally, I'll just kind of share with you some of my observations of nearly 25 years working for state parks. I was before my prior role, I was down here in the Bend area managing all state parks east of the Cascades for about 5 years, and so pretty familiar with the area. And while not like living on or adjacent to these properties, I'm aware of where they both are, and just kind of trying to reference again my observations of managing. So Oregon State Parks manages 254 properties, 362 miles of ocean shore. We see roughly about 65 million visitors a year. There is a concept of and it's been mentioned a couple times, of legitimate use drives out illegitimate use. Higher development means staffed sites. Staffed sites is what makes sure that those sites are safe and have the use that you're seeking as a county organization. So someone had mentioned earlier the idea of more a day use or more of a rustic development. I would just share my observation. Our properties that have very low development are the ones we see the most problems in. Where we see very little problems are the ones that we've built out. And the reason is because there's a staff member there. And that staff member is what is taking care of the issues and enforcing the rules, enforcing visitor behavior. That is where we see those problems are fractional compared to our undeveloped or lightly developed areas. And the main reason is those lightly developed areas don't generally have a assigned staff member at them. So that's one of my big ones is generally the higher level development is where you see the least amount of problems. Wanted to also share a little bit around fund sources. As was mentioned earlier, there are significant, while the costs are high, we're seeing exorbitant construction costs right now. So in our system, capital construction costs are extremely high and are 50 to 100% higher than estimates. So that has been a real factor. Oregon State Parks doesn't receive any general fund dollars from the State of Oregon General Fund. So we are very business minded on how we operate properties, and it comes down to generating revenue, which is usually around campsites. That is our moneymaker. So campsites are what makes a park solvent. So to that point, there's a significant amount of grant funds for development and build out of campgrounds. Some of those are through state parks, as was mentioned. The county opportunity grants are a significant fund source. The Land and Water Conservation Fund is a source that is easily accessed in the millions of dollars geared towards recreation. That is what it's set aside for. Those dollars are super attainable. What I do think, the only thing I saw that I was kind of in disagreement on the feasibility study was it was referenced about the RV tax dollars, RV registration tax dollars as a capital cost, and it's actually would be more for your daily operations. Those RV tax dollars are allocated annually, and it's dedicated per campsite. So every campsite you add generates hundreds of dollars per year. So a 200 to 300 site campground's probably going to get Deschutes County several $100,000 a year for operating costs of a campground. If you just build a day use park, you get none of that, $0. So that is a tune of $400 to $700 per site that you would get from that, which is substantial revenue when you talk about needing to staff a property. And so those are the daily costs that would come that's through the RV split of registrations. And for us, that's been a very consistent fund. And I know the counties that are operating campgrounds, they're very thankful and dependent on that fund. Beyond that, as I mentioned, those grant funds that are available for capital construction, obviously, those are contingent on achieving those funds or getting those funds allocated. But I know a lot of what I've seen in counties that have leveraged those funds. I would reference Jackson County and the Howard Prairie Resort. They were very successful and leveraged millions of dollars and paid for the majority of that construction of that brand new full service park down in Howard Prairie. And I think it's proving. I think if you talk to the folks down there, they would say it's proven to be very lucrative, even though it's only a few years old. So I think they've been very happy with how it's turned out. So generally for us, when we have full service campsites, that once they're built, they're occupied. And so for us, that's a big thing. The other one I would mention as the last thing is folks mentioned Tumalo and the look at Tumalo and versus a property like this that is undeveloped. What I would say is Tumalo is manicured nature. So we all have to keep that in mind, right? So it's not, if State Parks was not operating a property there, it would not look like that. It is a dry area. It would be a very desolate landscape. There's a lot of infrastructure under the ground that's not readily apparent that keeps that looking green and friendly and happy for visitors. So I think that would be something that we have to look at with a neutral eye, is obviously construction costs would hinge on having water access, but irrigation does miraculous things when it goes to making a park look natural. But that'd probably be the last thing I have to say, but appreciate the opportunity to speak.
So how many people are now visiting Smith Rock a year? Do you have any kind of numbers?
Oh, it's in the millions. I think it's probably pushing 1.5 million to 2 million visitors.
1.5 to 2 now?
And what kind of camping facilities do you have at Smith Rock State Park to service those millions of visitors a year?
Smith Rock is very underdeveloped for camping. It is what we consider a bivouac camp. It's the only one in our system, which is meant for single use occupancy, dry camping in a tent area.
So when we're talking about people who want to visit the outdoor amenities in the region, but then need a central place to actually stay for the night, Smith Rock is a tourism draw, but it's not a lodging.
Sure. Yeah, Commissioner Chang, I would just say, I would share with you just anecdotal information, but I would say we do get requests for more advanced amenities at Smith Rock for camping. We did not do that just because of our vision of what Smith Rock is, and we don't have a lot of ground. The areas that we've non-developed at Smith Rock are set aside for resource conservation, and we're we try not to get in the business of building every inch of the property. And so we chose not to expand into a more formal there just because it's already, as I think you're all aware, parking and staging is a problem there. And for us to build a more advanced amenity there would bring in more people. And that's probably our biggest draw there, is that we're overutilized and for our parking and just ground capacity.
And I'm not pushing for camping at Smith Rock. I'm just trying to kind of add to the regional picture of there's a whole lot of people who want to come here and visit who may not have places to stay at the premium destinations in the region.
Kim?
The Crooked River Grassland has a camping area at Skull Hollow that is not far away. It's like 10 miles away. And they recently tripled the capacity of that campground, and it still is always booked.
And that's dry as well.
Yeah, it's dry. It has a couple of vault toilets. They had to bring in another one because the lines in front of the one vault toilet that was there were 5 deep in the morning. I would just also like to say, if I could, I really hope the county takes the next step and looks more at the feasibility of building this. It may not work out, may not pencil out, but it's certainly worth taking a look at. I think there's a lot of great ideas that have been floated today that would warrant maybe taking the next step here.
Okay, we just have 5 minutes left for this group if there's any more comments, and then we have I believe we have some online comments coming. So are there any additional remarks you all would like to make? Are we good? All right, well, thank you so much for joining us. And now we have other topics and online.
Yes, and no one signed up in person for the topics. Will you just announce and ask if you're online and you want to participate, they'll raise their hand and then Steve will promote them to panelists.
Okay.
And they'll show on the screen.
Okay, if you are online and you would like to make a comment, would you please raise your hand so we can unmute you and bring you to the conversation, please? Are we seeing anyone? Stephen, is that you back there? No one has their hand raised? No one has their hand raised. Okay, closing comments then.
There are folks in the room who didn't come up in that first or second group who do any of those folks want to?
Anybody else want to get engaged?
Come on up and
Come on up.
come on up.
It's a round table discussion.
What I have need only one, I'm Lori Niederhoff, and I only have one statement to make because I was looking at the work that the gentleman earlier with his paperwork and his documents. And the only thing I want to bring up is it said it would be a 10-year, what was that, a 10-year to recoup? Is it 10-year to what?
10 to 12, yeah.
Yeah, 10 to 12,
Investment.
you're lucky to recoup your money. So, I mean, we're looking at a long time of money dishing out with no income enough to counter that. That's a long time.
I guess I would just say, as has been very clearly pointed out, that was pretty coarse feasibility, simple pro forma, doesn't take into account the cost of money, the financing that might be necessary. Didn't take into account any of the potential grant dollars that are available. Didn't take into account the annual share of RV registration dollars that are available to an entity that operates RV sites.
But right now we can only go by what we read, see.
But so the way to think about a payback period is not it is the period that it takes to pay back the capital costs. And you build a building, you build a road, you build anything. You start a business, and you kind of, buy a restaurant space and, gussy it up. There is a payback period. And for corporate investors, a good payback period is maybe 3 to 5 years. For public entities, I mean, we're the courthouse expansion that we're doing over there. We will be debt servicing that for 20 years. For public projects, typically capital costs take a long time to recoup. So a 10-year payback period for a public capital project is actually not so bad.
Actually, it's probably longer. It's probably going to take longer than that because your costs are you have yet to do more feasibility on the cost.
That's right. We need a much better financial analysis.
It takes several years to get this going. It's going to be even more money.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess my we can start to flow into closing comments. One of my closing comments is going to be, I see enough demand for camping in our region. I see enough potential of this site for a park that I think it is worth exploring, continuing to explore, learn, do a master plan. Then when you have a master plan, actually figure out how much it's going to cost from a capital perspective and come up with an operating plan, see how much that's going to cost. Then you can, how many sites you have a sense of the occupancy, then you can determine how much revenue you're going to make. And we can have a real financial analysis, and then we can make a decision at that point. My argument is that this piece of property has a lot of potential, and I think it is worth exploring, not deciding anything at this point, but exploring, taking the next step to explore, what it really looks like. And in the bigger picture, I'll just refer back to what I was saying earlier. This 500 acres of land exists in a region, in an area of the county where there is incredibly high demand for land for various kinds of uses. And if we do not identify an important public purpose for this land to stay in county ownership, I certainly cannot guarantee you that the county will continue to own this property.
To be honest, we just need some truer costs at this point of this project. And that's going to take some time on you guys' end.
So would you support doing a further analysis then?
No.
Okay. Well, then if we don't do more analysis, then we don't know how much it actually makes in a house.
You're going to do this anyway. You're gonna try to cost this out. You're just gonna have to be a little more accurate with that because you're just throwing out a lot of numbers right now.
I mean, if this board of if a majority of this board of commissioners doesn't choose to seek a grant to do more analysis and planning, it won't go anywhere. I mean, and for folks who want that to happen, for this concept to die right now, you can be advocating for that.
Take a vote on it. All right. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you, Lori. No one else in the room then care to join Lori at the table? Okay. Connie, I think you already had your turn, but what do you want to say?
But reason, because it was deferred on the access question, it was deferred a couple times. And
Yes.
it's really important because a lot of us, that's such a major issue.
You mean coming down 97 and pulling off with a horse trailer? Is that what you're talking about?
That, and also, I mean, some years back, I don't even know how long ago, there was a dude ranch who wanted to go in on, I think, a little south of Fort Thompson. They got denied because of access. So I just don't, I mean, we're going through all this work and money and
I know, and people are driving 85 and 90 miles an hour on 97. So yes.
But there must be an access point that I'm sure you guys have explored for this project, or it'd be dead on the vine, because that's why a lot of that property is not selling, because there's no access.
Right, there's no access, I know.
Yeah.
It's definitely an issue.
Yeah, so what's the
I mean,
theoretical?
you know, that you could come from Hunnell Road, you could come from the 97 side.
You could,
um,
ODOT will allow that?
If you put together enough frontage on 97, you could explore a right in, right out lane, you know, like you know,
Yeah, I think if.
another complete lane for a certain period,
proposing
you know,
that,
amount of
you'll make it
space.
A lot more buy-in, or, because it's,
We won't be able to answer any access questions unless we do more analysis and planning.
I think you should focus on access then, because if you can't get
Well,
in.
it would absolutely be a huge part of the next step of exploring this possibility. I mean, this was, again, you know, I can't emphasize enough to folks. We are not at a don't build decision point. This was a very preliminary feasibility analysis for the county.
I think it feels a little different.
I think that is the way that people have perceived it, and I'm sorry that, you know, it wasn't communicated better, but no one from the county told anybody that we were at the cusp of making a decision to build this or not.
So right now, there is no access feasibility yet.
There's, I mean, there are multiple potential ways you can get at this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. What? One more topic? Sure.
Not a different topic.
Well, it just didn't get a chance on it. It was 30 minutes.
Okay, Bruce.
So many of us, when we're talking, we all just start scratching our head with the concept that even if a nice campground went in at Fort Thompson, at whatever level, we'll leave that vague, that somehow it's going to draw the van life dispersed campers who are around in the forest for other reasons and there for their reasons. And no one can figure out the logic of why they think this is going to work for that purpose. And if someone can give me some documentation of why it would, or how many people we think you would get, or anything like that, it would be very nice instead of just blind faith.
Are you saying utilization of the facility?
Yeah, well, Commissioner Chang on June 5th said, and I don't think that worked anymore, but his primary target for this campground was the van lifers in the dispersed camping area. And it's been talked about a lot. If we, you know, this will help get the van lifers, or the dispersed campers, not the homeless group, but the other ones, out of the woods. And everyone's going, huh? They're in there because they want to be in the woods and not have neighbors and not pay, or they're riding their bike right outside the, you know, their Sprinter van on the weekends. So no one can figure out why this is going to draw that group out. That's all I'm asking.
So yeah, let me just finish a little bit. So terminology tonight, you know, a destination campground opposed to a transition campground. That was valuable to kind of use that terminology. I've always come to that conclusion that, oh yeah, we need more capacity. So transition campground is probably not the premier one, but, and I've already mentioned this to you. Somebody's going to dump a black tank somewhere, and there'll probably be a disposal at this site, some running water and a power, be able to take a shower. So transitional is exactly the utilization I see for this. You know, I don't know that
Documentation of, do you actually think 5% or 10% or?
Well, no,
the people that are up there that are that group would come over and use this?
I mean, you heard from state parks how more developed campsites are in higher demand than less developed campsites.
And that means a lot of expensive things.
It didn't say anything, that didn't speak to the van lifers that are up there near Phil's and that are up there near China Hat that you said you want to get out of there because then it was easier to deal with the homeless.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but
So if I can tell you,
use this
I don't have the time to go out and conduct surveys of people and do, I am a social science researcher by training. I got my MS at UC Berkeley in social sciences related natural resources. So I actually do know how you would analyze this, but I do not have the time or capacity to conduct those studies. But what I can tell you is that people camp a quarter mile in, half mile in to the Deschutes National Forest because they want to have access to the outside and they want to be really close to town. They want to be able to go to the pub and get a burger and beer and then drive a very short distance to a campsite in an outdoor setting. And this location is very, very close to the Cascade shopping center. You can go in there, you can get tacos and burritos, you could get sushi, you can go to Trader Joe's, you can do all those things. And people who disperse camp very close to town want to do that. I do a lot of dispersed camping myself on public lands, but I go way the heck out into the forest because I don't want, when I go dispersed camp, I don't want to be close to town. But if you are camped within a quarter mile of the urban growth boundary on the Deschutes National Forest, you want to be very close to town. You want to have it all. You want to be out in the woods and you want to have amenities.
Mile of the urban what was the term you used? A quarter mile of so pretty
The urban growth boundary.
What are you talking about?
I'm blanking on the gentleman's name that came with the group to our meeting, who was challenging me about like how many people are out there. We went out, we just poked around for about 45 minutes. I showed him 50 dispersed campers who are not homeless people. 50 dispersed, vans, Subaru Outbacks, you name it, all out there within very close proximity to the city limits.
But if they're not paying there, you're thinking they're gonna pay over here? Yeah.
You're saying that magically, if there was a campground in kind of a dust bowl, they'd rather be there because it has the shopping center nearby than in the woods.
I'm saying that you look at any decent, publicly operated campground in our area, you are going to find, as JR was mentioning, 5 months a year of complete occupancy.
I agree. So what did you, I don't understand what you just said.
So you were just asking, is anyone going to, you're questioning whether anyone would use a campground at this.
That specific target group would use it, would be able to use it for whatever reason.
Because if you've got a, I mean, people like to have access to a flush toilet. People like to have access to, you put Wi-Fi in a campground. People like to have access to Wi-Fi. People want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to be out in nature and they want to have every single amenity right at their fingertips.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. Okay, do you want to end up with finishing comments?
I think I made mine.
Okay, Commissioner DeBonne.
A couple things, we heard from our community development folks, we did some research on, what can we do on a resource land like that? And we were notified that government or counties may have a safe harbor for 50 spots. And that really kind of gets to the heart of, do we not have the opportunity to allow private property owners to do this on their private land too? So I'm just pointing out that there's already heartburn in the state land use system on this for me. Land use is locked down in the state, which means what your neighbor is allowed and not allowed to do. I understand that concept, but we are growing in as a community. What can we do to welcome the next people, relieve the stresses, and we're gonna have to turn the corner on unsanctioned camping sooner or later. We do have public lands all over, I always think of, we've got 79% public lands in our county already, we only have 20%. So the justification sometimes is saying, we need to protect that land right here because I don't understand, so I'm just pointing out there's a lot of yin and yang for me on this right now. And then, access. I mean, I agree. I don't know. I haven't studied the access, but that's huge. So, but yeah, just some thoughts.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes. Since I drive down Farrier and there's a whole bunch of places there where you can pull up with your horse and go riding. I honestly don't see that many people parked there. And yet, we have the best trail riding in, I'd say, Oregon in so many ways. And, when you can go ride for thousands of miles, thousands of acres, going out, I just think there's terrible access off of Highway 97. So anyhow, I do thank everyone for coming tonight. It is appreciated. This is a continuation of a long process. I really appreciate all you being here tonight and know that we are hearing what you're saying. Even you, JR. 1.5 to 2 million people are at Smith Rock. So you've got to go down there and try some of the restaurants. They're some of the best. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Stephen, for coming in.